If your website runs on WordPress and you're constantly fighting plugins, slow load times, and surprise costs, we've been there too. In this video, I'll show you exactly how we replace WordPress with a lean marketing stack and why it changed everything. We've helped brands like International Well Building Institute and Delos move off legacy platforms like WordPress and Drupal. And in 2025, our go-to combo is Storyblock and Nux. It's a radically improved way to help our clients manage, scale, and evolve their digital ecosystems. As one of our lead developers, Nick, says, with Storyblock, we can build once and let the content team run wild without needing us developers to get things done. Let's talk about your typical WordPress setup. Here's what we often see. Your dashboard is a mess full of plugin updates that are required, a lot of random notifications, things that you haven't looked at probably in years. Your site is probably pretty slow, and as you added more complexity and more plugins, it probably got slower. And you're realizing that day to day you're so dependent on these plugins that often don't play nice, and you're always worried that the things could break. Your pages are buried deep in different forms, and there's different templates that you've bought or added to the system, which make it quite a headache to manage. And then those plugins, as you keep adding them, they have fees. And at this point, you're not quite sure what you're even paying for. We recently had a client that was in a similar situation and found out that they were spending close to $3,000 a year on different plugins just to keep the site functional. And it was just going towards maintenance as opposed to advancing or moving the site forward, getting them into new lines of business or new opportunities. And at the end of the day, this just becomes this big Jenga tower of things that could go wrong or things that could surprise you. And we have just been thinking hard about this, and there's got to be a different way. And I think the good news is that there is, and that's what I want to get into next. I think the important thing at this point to understand is that moving from WordPress to something else isn't necessarily just a new website or a tech upgrade. It's really a strategy shift in how you approach content, how you approach marketing, how you approach your stack at large. And so we've moved to a tool called Storyblock, which is a virtual visual CMS built to scale up your business. And here's what makes Storyblock different. You build with these flexible content blocks once and then reuse them across the site without writing any new code. Our developer explains it like this. You can create a set of blocks and reuse them across the site, which allows for them to be called once, which allows it to be very powerful and consistent for both your brand and from a speed perspective. And so we worked with a recent client and built them 20 custom blocks. And since then, they now have the tools and the editor to launch pages without touching the code base at all. And Storyblock has, by and away, the best visual editor that we've seen, where you can edit text in real time on the actual page itself, publish it, swap images. And this type of live editing just doesn't exist on any other platforms. You also get these workflows to manage the history of the site and page. You've got native support for different languages, real version control to know how things are happening and changing, and a truly scalable, stackable approach to your web. For the front end, we pair Storyblock, which is the CMS, with Nuxt, a view-based framework that allows for a lot of terrific speed and stability support. Nick, our developer, says, we chose Vue because it evolves more gracefully with no surprise-breaking changes like in React, and Nuxt gives us structure and SSR out of the box. This means super fast loading times, SEO baked right in, the options for either static site generation, server-side rendering, or SPA support, all from one single code base. And this all dovetails into sort of the philosophy here, which is called headless. And that's full separation between your front end, which is sort of how your customers interact with your brand and your web, and back end where that content is stored and where you make those decisions. And it's cool because you're not locked in. You can reuse that front end and connect it to a different CMS, or take that CMS and connect it into a different front end. It gives you a ton of flexibility, both now and in the future as your brand changes or maybe your business strategy evolves. All right, let's break this down. WordPress for Storyblock. I think probably the easiest way to think about WordPress is that you have this container, and it comes out of the box with a few different features, kind of natively part of the system. But in order to take that box to new heights or do different things, you start to bring in things from the outside to give you the features and whatnot that you're looking for. So there is all these dependencies on these outside systems to make the site work. And because of all that third-party dependence, it makes it very hard to move or change or do major modifications if business takes off or things start to scale, or you have a change of ownership or change of direction, let's say, for the business. The cool thing about Storyblock is that it's built differently. It's organized in sort of a matrixed approach where there are systems that are connected to work, which allow you to work together and have these things parceled out and separated to allow for scale that is much easier. So you have the front end, which is like the code, how the site is looking and feeling for the users. You have this back end or this CMS, which is Storyblock, which is where all your images and content and text for your site is stored. And then you can, because of those separated elements, you can do a lot of different things, swap and change and move things around. And so things can stack and you aren't dependent on this kind of closed system. And so this flexibility allows for better performance because the things are isolated and optimized to do their specific function as opposed to lumping it all into one category. Editing is easy because the CMS is stripped down. It's not tied to the design necessarily. Scaling, you get to add new functions. You could add a second website experience based off the CMS and continue to scale up your brand as you get more and more nuance into your system. From a security perspective, the neat thing is because all this is separated, it is a lot more secure as opposed to WordPress, which is dependent on these third parties. Each plugin becomes a liability. Over here with Nuxt and sort of that framework, let's put Nuxt here. We have control over the dependencies. From a maintenance perspective, you're doing a lot of patching, updating, finding bugs, as opposed to in Storyblock. It's stable, focused, and forward-moving to kind of help your brand continue to grow. And I think all in all, if you run a certification business or one that is doing a lot of business online, say your standard body, or you have a membership ecosystem, I think having that flexibility is going to be critical, especially as you get into new markets. You want some multilingual content. You might have people in different offices that you need to control the roles and workflows for how content or things are published on the site. I think the other cool thing when it comes to this flexible CMS is you could have completely separate multilingual sites depending on the region. You could have different projects or kind of messaging or content based on where things are, where people are located. And ultimately, it's getting to a place where your system is future-proof. You could continue to evolve and grow and not be kind of anchored down by this open but pretty closed system. And ultimately, I think for all of us, as we are building upon these missions and trying to get our standards and our certification and our work out there, having a way to scale without the chaos is the way forward. And Storyblock and Nuxt are built for that complexity and help your content outlast any single CMS, regardless of where you're headed and what your business now entails. Going headless isn't just about new technology. It's ultimately a business advantage. It'll allow you to rebrand your site without rebuilding your backend. All of your assets and content are in one single place. It'll give you the opportunity to collaborate more fluidly across your marketing, development, and content teams, and empower them with full control over the data, code, and roadmap for your website. And as well, give you the chance to have a distributed approach to web, mobile, and even kiosks, giving you the power to distribute your content from one single hub. WordPress was built for simpler times, but your organization is navigating complex terrain, multilingual content, multi-team workflows, governance, and scale. If you're aiming for long-term evolution, seamless collaboration, modern SEO and performance, and real control over your infrastructure, it's time to upgrade your stack. Storyblock and Nuxt didn't just help us move faster, it makes the entire journey smoother, and it might do the same for you.